New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
And hello again, dear ones. Rev Briz with you over here.
Rev Z right here.
And this is New Thought today for this, the 30th of April, 2024. There it is, Z. It's May. Here we go. All we gotta do is get through today.
Yeah, I mean, it's, 1/3 of the year is gone.
Exactly. And that means there's still plenty of time to do all kinds of fun stuff. So thanks for being with us here today, folks. This is New Thought Today, where we get a chance to talk about, well, what we see as the future of this movement and how this movement can serve and support humanity's future as well, and growth and evolution. And we have all kinds of interesting conversations here. So feel free to ask questions as we go along, drop a comment, whatever it is. Any comment you decide to leave, it all goes a long way to helping us get this message out, reach new people. So like, share, subscribe, all those kinds of things. And we're going to kind of get into it here today because, all right, one of the things that happens with Z and I when we get together is we come to a place where we can recognize the principles and often the practices of New Thought operating in healthy systems across a wide range of human conditions, experiences, is how you want to say it, I guess. And it always comes back to one primary central question, and that is, how do I make this work for me? How do I make it work for me in a way that because we get these great conversations, and part of this is born out of how many different quote New Thought principles are there, and which are the most recognizable, I guess, in outside of New Thought communities. You did a little bit of research and found a few things for us, Z. Tell us some of the things that rise to the top when people generally think of New Thought principles.
Sure. Yeah, it as I was sitting there looking at them, they look very broad. Self-awareness, positive affirmations, visualization, gratitude, releasing resistance. Those are probably the top 5 things that people think about, right? Now, on occasion, they'll throw in inspired action, right? But normally that doesn't come up, right? Because all of this stuff is done in consciousness, and there's very little action that needs to be done, in terms of some people's interpretation of how this works.
Right. And always kind of leads us back to that big question: how do I make it work? And how do I visualize better, or how do I release? And I'm sorry, I forgot the language you just used on that, but these different pieces and parts of the puzzle, and that's the fun part. That's kind of the human condition, and we all have a different opportunity to do that in our own way. Generally, I like to say, as long as it doesn't hurt anybody.
Mm-hmm. you know, and I think as we were in digging into this question, I guess I was thinking about, you know, there often people have criticisms of New Thought because they when they say it's woo woo or it's flowery or something like that. I don't think it is, but I mean, if someone, if I had a challenge I was trying to deal with, and someone said, "Oh yeah, you just got to visualize," um, you know, you got to change your kinds. It doesn't. It it's a spark that may get the thing jumped off, but it's not going to sustain me.
That works if you've been around for a while. If you're very well practiced and you have a very deep relationship with the divine, you can, I think, more easily say, "Oh, come on, just snap out of it." I think I can do that to myself when I know I released a little tension, some tension in the wrong direction, or allowed myself to get a little overly stressed. I can snap myself out, and there's those that can do that for me as well, right? There's those people in my life that can say, "Hey, come on, Robert, now let's get back, let's practice what we preach here. Let's, and but that is an advanced practice, I think, from my experience. The folks that are just coming into this philosophy, folks that are just getting their feet wet in all of this, that can sound rather abusive pretty quickly.
Yes, yes, and very glib and elitist and entitled, and people say, okay, I don't want no part of that, given all of the other types of challenges people are facing, with those same similar terms in different arenas. And I'm thinking that, and it's beginning to happen, and we talked about it once before, is about social action. Where does social action dovetails with New Thought in action, right? When do we begin to show a lead by leading, right? By being the example and not just by words.
This is I've been giving this one a lot of thought. I know a lot of people in the movement have. I know you have, and we've talked about it in many, many different ways. And I'm coming to the kind of that point where if that is where we find ourselves, then that is where New Thought has led us.
Mm-hmm.
If we've truly created an environment, and not just a physical environment here, but a mental environment. If we've created a mental environment that says, this is my perspective of justice, this is how I see the people of the world deserve to be treated. If I see where I see injustice, and my understanding, my relationship, my deep study of this philosophy has led me to a point where my voice needs to be heard saying, "Stop it," then who in the world am I to judge that? But it's not just something you can jump into. It's not just something that happens. Again, to me, I think the nexus, if you will, of social justice and New Thought is not for the beginner. It is not for somebody who's just coming into this philosophy going, "Hey, how do I use this stuff?"
I would agree, but I would also put a juxtapose to that and say, if we get somebody involved in service, I can begin to point out to them where gratitude steps in. I can show them where patience and resilience and things step in, or and what happens when you employ or not employ those broad concepts, right? Because if I start talking about gratitude shows up in many different ways. There's no one way to express gratitude. And so it's like we talk about this in any sport where there's a team, basketball, football, soccer, lacrosse, you figure one out. They always go in with the strategy, or a game plan, but they have to be flexible enough to adjust that game plan on the field, because it, you know, it might not turn out that way. You might have a game plan in football for passing, and it starts pouring down rain. You're not going to be passing anymore.
Okay. Yeah.
And I think in New Thought, if we begin to get people involved in community activities, whatever they are, social, restorative, service, we can begin to point those things out a lot
Yeah.
better.
Very true. Dear one, Mara saying, Mara, I hope I'm saying that properly. I cannot be a bystander. And yes, and standing with and standing for are various aspects of standing next to, and sometimes the physical, I cannot be there in the physical body. Sometimes I cannot be there as the vocal aspect of the
Right.
divine. But if I'm there in consciousness, I can trust that there are others being the voice and being and leading the charge on in the physical realm.
Right. Yeah. Cause I mean, because clearly we know, you know, when you look at and I love the football team because they got a bunch of players, 50 something players, and then you got trainers and coaches. You know, we don't expect the coach or the quarterback to go out in the game and throw the ball.
Right.
We expect him to advise the coach, the quarterback, get him in shape, show him options, yada, yada, yada. Right. So it's that same thing in society, in that we have to find what our role is, be able to play that role, if you will, very well, and not get jealous of the quarterback because he may be getting more glory than you, although he can't do anything, or he wouldn't be as good as he is without your guidance and your training and your this, that, and the other. And so we have to begin to, we talk about this a lot in New Thought. We have to really understand the purpose and the aim of the ego.
Yes. I was just working on a piece about this actually, not yesterday, and it's not due for a little while, so it's not done yet. And I 100% agree with you. And the truth is, it's sometimes very easy, and it's very prevalent in New Thought to transcend the ego, to totally ignore the ego, to totally dismiss the ego, to totally try to annihilate the ego. And when how did you just say it? The purpose and then the purpose
And the
and
aim. Yeah, what's the purpose and the aim of the ego?
yes.
Because I think, and I'm beyond thinking now. I think I know that. I'm not sure who said it, if it was Plato or Aristotle or whatever. It's very clear, whether we are conscious of it or not, we're all playing a part in a great big play or movie. And sometimes we show up as the hero or shero, and sometimes we show up as the villain, right? And sometimes we show up as the old poor me or the victim, or and so I think individually at some point in our lives we take part in each one of these roles, if you will, and various different ways of explaining it. But if I've been in an awkward situation and I see someone in it and are similar and they're getting harassed, and I'm like, ooh, maybe we need to ease up. You don't understand all that yet. Just right on the outside trying to look in.
We're dancing into my favorite territory of visioning and knowing and recognizing the vision. And part of that is the question that right, what is my role to play in all of this? And especially I have an opportunity coming up to facilitate some more organizational visioning, bigger picture stuff.
Right.
and actually that information will be released tomorrow. So we're going to do some big picture visioning for the New Thought movement as a whole, and how what the future looks like as far as growth, and not trying to mandate what that, and not coming from that place of, oh, this is how we're going to do it, folks,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
coming from a place of, oh, how are we going to do this, folks? Because it's something that needs to be done. It's something that wants to be done, and we don't understand how to get it done just yet. We've got to be in a place of saying, okay, so what wants to be done? How is this going to happen? And vital to that process is understanding what is my role to play, because I can't play them all, and it ain't going to help if I try to play them all. So, and if I try to play them all, then there's nothing for you to do and no role for you to play. So, what in every opportunity, it's I think one of the more powerful questions that we ask ourselves: what is my role here? And allow that to be revealed, rather than come into it going, hey, this is what I'm good at, so this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah, and I think it's paramount, I think, that we have to begin to allow ourselves to explore outside of our comfort zone. In that, I may be doing this position or playing this role right now and be very good at it, but I could be just as good or better at another role, but I haven't tried that because I got a sweet spot here. I don't have to work that hard. I don't have to sweat too much. I got it within a certain tolerance, and I'm coasting.
Everybody just expects me to do this part and play this role, so I'll just kick back and do what is expected of me.
Yep. There's a saying that goes, you work you work hard enough to keep from getting fired, and they pay you just enough to keep from quitting.
Yeah.
So there's this in this same context. I think there's that two-step dance, and then eventually you see the breakouts, the Kings, the Gandhis, the Malcolm X's, the Mother Teresa's, the people who really step out and say, I'm going to be the change.
Right.
And then people begin to say, ooh, those are pretty good principles they're living by.
And we see, so we see more and more people living by New Thought principles. I can, in the 20 years I've been in this movement, I see more and more places where more and more people are professing, at least, that they live by New Thought principles.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't see the problems the same way. I want to be clear. The U.S. has been at war in one way or another for going on 20, 30 years now. So, and even if it doesn't look like we're actively at war, we seem to have our money invested somehow in war. So we've been invested in war for much longer than I've been involved in this movement. So the concerns, let's say, the worldly problems haven't necessarily changed, other than the drapery, other than the costume it wears, but I have, and how I can respond to the events of the day, and how I can look at those events of the day and not fall into the trap of adding to the negativity, but taking that high road to adding more hope, more potentiality, more trust, more faith, add a deeper sense of assurance. Use these principles, the practices we teach, rather than just teach the practices we teach.
Right. And so we get this idea that we hear a lot about organic. How do we, and I'm looking at the organic being a term where it's more natural. It's not grafted. It's not artificially propped up, i.e., like they would say with fertilizer, right? We want We want to organically grow the food. Um, and if I look at it in that context, the organicness or the organic matter that we have to find ourselves in to grow this philosophy is we need a little we need a little challenge every now and then. We need to have some activity that's going to push us beyond our comfort zone, so that even ourselves, either we've forgotten or we haven't applied a certain principle, tool, in a way that it becomes alive again. It awakens and says, ooh, this is what prayer really is. It's not the words, it's the words and actions. And maybe sometimes you don't even see the words. The prayer is the action. And we have to begin, I believe, to look at life this way, because there's no one way of life.
You just hit it. There is no one way of life, and we have to both individually and collectively create a way of life, a way of living this. And that phrase, it's been part of my language for quite a long time now. And it's been said that the science of mind is a faith, a philosophy, and a way of life. And I think that's very appropriate, because it gives us a framework from which to think, and it gives us a framework from which to believe, and it gives us a framework from which to demonstrate, to prove that we are, to prove that we are living these principles.
And what did Ernest say, the founder of religious science? He says, I'd rather you learn one or two of these things in the book and put them into practice than if you could recite the whole book by verbatim, right?
Yes.
Because being able to articulate a thing and being able to do the thing are two totally different entities, right? Two totally different adventures. And
then
although both are good and needed, one is going to yield more than the other, I think.
And when you do it enough, then it's not really doing anymore. It is the being. Mm-hmm. It becomes just our way of life. We've talked about this before as well. So many people that don't turn to prayer until the shit hits the fan. Oops, sorry, wrong vernacular, folks. That's Friday's show where I'm allowed to say words like that. I apologize. But we don't repeat it, right? And that reactionary, oh my God, now I need prayer. And it's interesting, because I don't ask a lot of people for prayer, because I'm constantly already there. And we can and we create that environment where it's like, I don't have to remind myself to do my prayer before I get out of bed in the morning. It is the great pleasure to do. And I don't have to remind myself to slow down in the middle of my morning and take a moment or two to recenter and reorganize my thoughts and come back to a prayerful state of remembering truth. It just is part of who I am. It just happens now.
Right. And I think, one of the keys there is I don't have to think about it. It becomes automatic. And I think another point to keep in mind on that is, mine may not look like yours. And I mean, I've said that the same thing 3 different ways. But I mean, think about when we look at some of the conflicts around the world in terms of religion or spirituality. There's very little doubt that they understand that they're trying to achieve the same things with their system, whatever it is. But because theirs don't look like mine, right, or something in that vernacular, now we got a problem, and we finna go off the deep end. And so we have to begin to understand that this is like, hey, there's A horse and a donkey are in the same family, but they're different animals. They may look alike a little bit, but they're different animals.
And a donkey and an ass are just as far apart. All right, we're going to take a quick break there, folks, and let you laugh about that one for just a moment as we do. We're going to take a real quick break, say hello to a couple of sponsors, things that we think you would like to know about, and grab a little sip of water. But we're going to be back in just a moment or two with more of New Thought today here on the New Thought Media Network. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Kitchener, Unity Spiritual Center Ottawa, Om Center for Spiritual Living, Satya Center, Begin Within Ministries, Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and the Center for Spiritual Living Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for being part of the New Thought Media Network. Please like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you, thank you, thank you to all of our organizational sponsors and individual donors. It is thanks to your financial support that we're able to take this message out into the world and continue to reach a broader and broader audience with the New Thought message. We appreciate you. Thank you so much. All right, back into it, Z. So I was thinking about it on the break that no matter what, I keep coming back to Dr. Johnny Coleman's It Works If You Work It. And I got to be honest, like I never studied Dr. Johnny. I barely know of her lineage and her history. I am a newcomer by a long shot to her contribution to the New Thought movement. But if all she has ever remembered for is It Works If You Work It, it is becoming a stalwart. It's becoming a cornerstone of how I live this, how I create my environment, how I'm creating my own way of life, how I'm reminding myself. We just got to do the work of it.
Yeah, yeah, and by definition, I think New Thought means work, right? It's a new definition of work, because we talk in New Thought. We talk about Jesus being the master teacher. Jesus said, I'm going out here doing some work. I'm going up in the money changing places. I'm going and changing fishes to loaves. I'm going up in the synagogues, and I'm teaching the teachers, the master teachers, right? So it was work. It was not about a passive conciliatory kind of a way. It's like, okay, these are the principles and they're supposed to give us life. Then let me see.
Let me live.
And think that's where we are. I mean, we've talked about this a lot. For me, I sometimes question, and this is across the board for spiritual leaders and teachers, are they trying to be speaking celebrities, or are they trying to be ministers? Now, a minister can become a personal icon. I think it's very challenging for a personal icon to become a minister in the true sense of the word. Because I think the motivations are very different.
Yes, I agree with you there. Absolutely. It's not to say someone can't change from one to the other.
No.
But it's tough to do what it takes to be a quote personal icon, and still be able to effectively minister to people.
Right.
It's and because honestly, it's not easy ministering to people. You know that. I know that. Any good minister worth their salt knows that. If it's easy, somehow I think you're in the wrong job. But because especially in New Thought,
right,
every new thing is coming our way, and every old thing is already open for discussion.
Yeah. We what we always say, it's always a cycle, right? So we cycle back now to spiritual dynamics, or the cycle of life, in that we keep coming back to these same touch points, point 0, point 10, point 180. And the vibration and the vision and the scene at each one of those points is the same, except for the vantage that you're looking at it.
Right.
At 0.0, I'm on ground level. At 0.1, I'm a little above ground level. So I'm getting a slightly different vision. And when I get to 0.10, I'm looking at a totally different world now. And if these principles work throughout the sphere, if you will, I have to figure out how to make them work and how they apply.
Yep. Yeah, I'm reminded that this is the 20th anniversary of the movie The Secret.
Oh, is it? I have to go watch it this evening.
And my understanding is they're coming out with a new 20th anniversary edition. With,
nice.
Some things and some add-ons, I guess, or whatever. And the truth is, and it just keeps reminding me that we're going to go through that cycle of people that become interested or introduced to the New Thought message through that. And I remember 20 years ago, there were a lot of, it was both. There were people that embraced that movie to say, yeah. And there were others that said, yeah, but that's our thing. So you should stay away because that's our thing. And you shouldn't be doing this because that's our thing. And it'll be really interesting to watch what happens this time around and see which communities are embracing and want to utilize, and which communities are going to say, I don't know. And because we're about to repeat a cycle, plain and simple.
Yeah, what would really be interesting if they did a 20th year secret, and that's more than 20 years for what the bleep, but to take it, to use the same framework and show what has been,
what those people
manifested or how it's unfolded in 20 years. Back here, we were giving you, this is what happened when we do mindfulness. Now we got heart math. We know a little bit better what this stuff does. We've mapped it for 25 years, right?
That's true too. Yes. We weren't really even talking about heart math at that point. And now everybody's talking about, everywhere I turn, I see somebody talking about heart math. Yep. Important stuff. It would be very interesting to see that, to see where those various those various people, what they did create with, and because as I'm kind of flashing through a lot of them continue to be great influence upon the consciousness of humanity, and
Mhm.
still to this day are at the leading edge of revealing the grand vision for what we're doing here, for what's going on here.
Yep. Yeah.
I,
And I'm like I have to. I haven't been to a Abraham Hicks or listened to one of her presentations or his presentation or their presentations. It's a they them, I guess. Um, but I would love. I mean, I was a fan of the content and the information that was being put out in terms of consciousness raising. I would love to go back and pay attention now, which for me would be a good 10-15 years since I was very a very astute student, and see where it is now.
yeah, there's it's hard to, it's interesting. Don't go to YouTube is my advice, because there's a billion things on YouTube, and it's almost impossible to know when anything was shared.
Right.
It's much more difficult to say, oh, well, yeah, that was 1995. That was 2010. This was 2015. And
Right.
the message, and interestingly, I believe the message of Abraham has remained fairly consistent over time and evolved enough to match. I think they continually attract a fairly stable base of people along their spiritual experience. It's kind of everybody listens to Abraham Hicks at some point in the New Thought
Oh yeah.
movement, right?
Yeah.
And studies that, and we come to a point of almost where, oh, I know what they're going to say. Or not, someday.
Yeah. No, I agree because you know the one thing I got from Abraham was this: the tool set you came to the table when you first got involved or heard those New Thought teachings. They either sharpened your tools that you already had, or they exposed the tool that you had that wasn't that good, wasn't that sound, and you had to either you had to fix it or get rid of it.
I had to be primed. When I look back on it, I wasn't introduced to New Thought. I was primed through over time, unbeknownst to myself, unaware of myself. And one of them was a science book that's all quantum physics.
Right.
And I don't even remember how it found me. And it was just interesting enough that I think it's still on the shelf there somewhere. And and then, like, on the heels of that was the Celestine Prophecy.
Yes.
But I had no idea what I was being awoken to. I wasn't on a search. I wasn't looking. I wasn't seeking anything. There was just this, oh wow, damn, this is a pretty interesting story. Too bad this shit ain't real, right? Oh wait, maybe this could be real. And but it was still a couple of years probably after that before I would ever hear the term New Thought.
Yeah.
Or science of mind, for that matter, or even metaphysics.
It's a good meditative concept, right? I think to sit and think about or retrace one's journey into New Thought, right? Because when I think about my introduction to Abraham, I was kicking and screaming. Somebody gave me a cassette tape. That's how long ago it was. I listened to the cassette tape and it sounded like, okay, there's some good stuff in here, but I don't know about this disembodied thing. You know, in the South we call that a ghost, and you know, yeah, and ghosts aren't necessarily who you want to hang out with. And then I told them that they gave me another one, and I said, oh, that was, you know, I guess because I'd gotten over the initial shock. And then the first DVD came out of a program,
Okay.
and I ordered it.
Of her going into
And
the trance,
this,
actually.
huh?
And you're able to see her go into the trance.
It was, and when she first went in, I thought it was, she just did a little thing. I mean, like 2 minutes, and boom, she was in it. And I'm like, oh man, this is some stuff. And the first question that came up was one of these questions, and I'm thinking to myself, oh, they got her now. They got her now. And she answered that question so eloquently and so on point with so much content that I was like, oh, this is a real deal right here. Because
Wait a minute.
you can't fake what she just did. You know, you can't even script what she just did. And that's how I began to saying, okay, this spirituality, this new thought, this way of living is beyond your comfort zone and beyond your expectations.
Right. Well, that's what we mean by you know it when you know it. You know truth when you know it. You know truth when it smacks you in the face. You know the truth when you can see it. And you know when it isn't. You know when something's full of shit. And even though your humanness might have been saying, yeah, nah, this is bunk, you know truth when you see it.
Yeah. I read something the other day, and I'm not going to get it exactly right, but it says something. It says, you know, belief is based on some information, but truth is based on experience, no matter how you get the experience. And they're very close, but they're very different at the same time.
Right. Sometimes it's a mystical experience. Sometimes it's a long, drawn out physical experience. Sometimes it just happens again in those intuitive, mystical ways that says, "I don't know how I know this, but I know this."
Yep.
And then you're given the proof that you're right. That yeah, you
Yeah.
do know what you're talking about there.
You know, I had a conversation with two different people twice this weekend about this idea of non-resistance and letting go, where found I found myself, someone found themselves in a situation that was somewhat of a pickle. And when we surrendered to it by just saying, well, you know, if it happens, or, you know, I can't change, blah, 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 it just flowed out exactly like we had envisioned, but we never could have put it in play ourselves.
Right. Right. Exactly. And that's a big key of it. It's those moments where you look at it and say, holy schnuga, this is better than I could have imagined. Oh my gosh, I would never have thought this could happen this way. This is better than we ever thought, huh, buddy? This is better
Yeah.
than we ever imagined, huh?
Yeah.
And those are those moments that make it like, wow, I worked it. I worked it, and now it's working.
Right. Right. And then the key is to realize it and say, okay, what do I need to do? How do I need to perceive and be in the world to keep this flowing through? I may not recognize it every time, but I want to get to the point to where I know when I get in that sweet spot, so to speak, I know it's there because I know it's always flowing.
Right. And that's where, okay, one of the, and in our researching around the principles or the thoughts of new thought, there's always that know thyself, be aware, self-awareness, be aware. But that goes back to all the way back, right? Is that not the original philosophical thought of know thyself? Because and I think we talked about it earlier, right? The ego does serve a good purpose. And we have to be very, very cautious of how we let that be expressed. So, in knowing thyself, there is also a deep, deep humility and a deep recognition that over my life's experience, this is where I go too far, or these are the conditions by which I let my ego get in the way, rather than serving the silent, the strong silent type, the little voice in the background that we don't let out all that often, but that keeps us in our own way driven and determined to move forward. There's such that balance right there, and to be able to recognize and know thyself that, okay, slow down, back up, take a step, take a breath, time for a sabbatical, whatever it might be, is important.
Yep. And that is, as Paul Harvey would say, and that is the rest of the story. Because and I know some people are like, what the heck?
Did you really just compare me to Paul Harvey? Did you really just put me in the same realm as Paul Harvey? Thank you. I'll take that. Why not?
Because Paul would come in and take these big stories and be able to bring in those little nuances, those other little pieces, so that your perspective of a story was, if not completely changed, significantly enlightened by the additional information that he provided.
There we go. I love it.
We need some Paul Harveys of New Thought is what we need. We got to find some Paul and Paulette Harveys.
I've been trying to study Alan Watts. I'm trying to, but I don't think I could do what he did. So,
yeah. Well, and that's the thing. Now, Alan Watts is he's my top man. I mean,
yes,
because of he came with that Eastern philosophy, and he was studying to be a priest at one time. I don't know if people knew that. And so he was wrapped up into the intricacies of this thing and was peeped into a different way of viewing. And he came out. I mean, if you listen to the concepts, I mean, my favorite one about him that I always talk about is just, you have to view the world in oscillation at a micro, macro, and a steady state, because at each one of those, you get a different perspective and you do different things, but one without the other will lead you astray.
Yeah. Very true.
And that's where, and I think that's, if we look around in any specific field of play, economics, community building, politics, healthcare, education, pick an arena, if you will, those particular points of view, micro, macro, and steady state, are not, don't appear to be used consistently. It's right. One or the other. It's not all three.
And that's sort of where you and I started today, is in that realization that people are still allowing that sense of separation between this part of their life and that part of their life, between this aspect and that aspect, when what we really have to do is implement for ourselves new thought into every one of those systems, into every one of those different aspects, and not compartmentalize. Well, this works here, and this works there, and this works there, and this works there. But thank you, we're back to it. It works if you work it, and you got to work it everywhere all the time.
Yeah, and it's really like Ernest said, thoughts are things. No, and so the thoughts that and so as I shift to different arenas, the thought changes because the arena changes. And as a result, the appropriate thing for that arena pops up.
True. Yes. Or not. And then I'm just left wondering, oh, why the hell did I say that?
Yeah. And could you think about it? the way I deal with it's going to be corny and obvious. The way I deal with water in a scuba diving environment is very different from the way I deal with water in a boating environment. There are things I can do from a scuba diver perspective of water that I can't do with the boat, or vice versa. So I can't automatically just transfer those skills over and think I'm going to be all right in my understanding in the way I maneuver and work with water.
It would be very hard to steer a boat wearing scuba gear. Yes.
And I mean, and think about current. Think about wind currents on the boat and ocean currents on the diver.
Yes.
Very,
Okay.
very similar kinds of things are happening, but they're going to play out a little. There's some intricacies that are very different.
Same principle, different environment. Yep.
And when we can get new thought to be able to flip that switch, what's the new thought for this and that? Although I know there's some subtle changes, and sometimes they're huge changes, but I know that it'll fit.
Yep. You just said something that I think is really key, and it's something we've been saying. How does new thought serve or fit to this? And some colleagues of ours, and I don't remember exactly who's involved, so I don't want to say the wrong thing, are doing a webinar event that is a new thought on climate change. I think there is something there that is part of how this is evolving, if you will, how the dissemination of this information is evolving, is we are at a point where we can look at a new thought on any given topic, any given social issue we want, on gun control, on sex trafficking, on the opioid crisis, on whatever it is we want to talk about. Now is the time to start having a new thought on those issues. And there it is. There's my final thought. I'm done. We're checking out. Let's, whatever. Okay.
Yeah. And I would add to that to just say the times are forcing us to return to the idea of being critical thinkers. Because if we become critical thinkers, most of, if not all of, the principles known and unknown to what it means to say I'm a new thought metaphysical practitioner or adherent will begin. Because it's to be a critical thinker, that means you got to have a new thought. You got to think differently about the thing that whatever you're discussing or talking about or investigating or fixing, and immediately the wheels begin to turn. And so I would say we have to become critical thinkers with a new thought tool set.
Critical thinkers with a new thought tool set. I like that. I like that a lot. There we go, folks.
Let's go do it.
Let's go do it. Let's go do it. How do we do it? It works if you work it. Here we are an hour later. It works if you work, and let's go do it. And I'm with you. I think that's what it is, and it's going to be different for everyone. But we invite you to find your way of making this work in your life, and help and finding a way to make this work in the organizations that you're a part of, the organizations you serve, the organizations you love. If that happens to be New Thought Media Network, hey, by all means, head on over to the website, click on the donate button, and share some of your financial good. Help us to take this movement and this message out into the world in a more powerful way. On behalf of my dear brother, Reverend Elzia, and myself, we want to thank you for being here. We'll be back again next week. And until then, I want to wish you there I did it. I want to wish you peace and richest blessings. Bye now.